you are married to Christ. Remember, you are married to a jealous husband. The idea of a jealous husband. Be careful, Christians. You're married to Christ. He's a jealous husband. It is, and what he means by that is Christ wants 100% devotion to himself. Anytime it goes in the opposite direction, we're going to see this when we get to Hosea. He's very jealous. He wants you to come back. He wants all the attention. Here's a next quote. Happy is the man who is happy in his wife. And then he follows that up with married life is not all sugar. I love that. Married life is not all sugar, but grace in the heart will keep away most of the sours. That's a pretty good one. Married life is not all sugar, but grace in the heart will keep away most of the sours. Well, how do we deal with unrealistic expectations that's being reported into Facebook? All right. I think the meat of this chapter is going to be on page 20. I know I'm skipping up a little bit ahead, but page 20 is where he talks about you can expect the expected. I like the choice of words. So on page 20, he starts with you can expect the expected. And then he gives three things that come from that. And I'll just summarize them for you. Here are three things that you can expect with every single marriage. One, we live in a fallen world. Two, we are fallen people who marry fallen people. Three, God is faithful. And all those things we can expect. Before I get to the first one, that we live in a fallen world, I want to share some things with you. There was a story of a hero in the Christian life. Let me tell you the story. This is a true story, okay? And I'm going to tell you the name of the husband, but I don't know the name of the wife. His name was Lonnie, and he is a Christian. I don't know if he's still alive. He may have recently passed away, but his wife has passed away. When he got married, it was a great ceremony, right? It was a huge deal. They got married. They were both believers. Very shortly after he got married, his wife contracted a disease. I believe it was a genetic disease or something. I only know possibly the abbreviation of ASL. I don't even know what it stands for. But it was a debilitating disease. And they were unable to live a life of normal marriage. They could not have regular sexual fulfillment after she got this disease, and that part of the marriage was not there anymore. And this is when they got early on married, okay? So this is a young married couple, and the husband, Lonnie, believed that it was his duty to love his wife, and he stayed married to her until the day she died and was faithful to her completely, 100%. Now that story is quite an incredible story if you think about it. Here's a man who is freshly married, but his wife contracts this disease, and he's unable to have the normal sexual experiences that a freshly married couple would have all the way throughout their marriage experience to the end. They didn't have that, but he remained faithful until the day she died, and they were married for a good long time. That is a Christian marriage. That is amazing. Now, let me flip that on you just for a second story. I was watching a show several years ago, and I was disgusted because I don't even remember what show it was, but there was a married couple, and one of the married couples, the wife, I believe, ended up having a debilitating brain issue. She couldn't even communicate with people in a rational way. Couldn't even communicate at all. Ended up stopped talking. Well, in the show, they justified the husband leaving his wife in the nursing home and going and living a life of unfaithfulness when she would never know. And they justified it by saying, that's not really her. She's no longer there. You are okay to go and find. You have needs too, you know. So go on and live your life. And I want to tell those two stories because that's the difference between Christian marriage and non-Christian marriage. Non-Christian marriage, listen to this, non-Christian marriage is a commodity. Christian marriage is an absolute surrendered commitment to someone for the rest of your life. That's what it is. It is a picture of the gospel. It is not a tack on to your life. Now, that doesn't mean there's not going to be ruined expectations. No doubt Lonnie and his wife, when they got married, they anticipated that they would be married and have a life filled of happiness and joy. And that was quickly, if I can use the word ruined, very quickly ruined by the announcement that she had a debilitating disease. And yet he remained faithful. I think that's a good thing to hold up. This is how you deal with expectations. He didn't even have an unrealistic expectation. He had a realistic expectation of living a life of happiness with his wife, and that was upset. That was upset, but the Lord gave him grace to get through it. We live in a fallen world. That's point number one. On page 21, he makes the point of God, how God knows we live in a fallen world. And in Acts 17, he talks about how the Lord has arranged people to live in certain places and at certain times. The very bottom of the page on 21, at the end of the last second, the end of the second paragraph, where it says you are conducting your marriage in a fallen world, he says, he knows where you live, and he is not surprised at what you are facing. Even though you face things that make no sense to you, there is meaning and purpose to everything you face. I am persuaded that understanding your fallen world and God's purpose for keeping you in its foundational is foundational to building a marriage of unity, understanding, and love. I think sometimes that we can have this unrealistic expectation that when you get married, we no longer live in a fallen world. And that's ridiculous, of course, but we kind of live that way. We expect it to be a bed of roses, and it's not going to be a bed of roses. You still live in enemy-occupied territory, in the words of C.S. Lewis. And on page 21, he talks about, it's the middle of the page in the paragraph, he talks about being tested. He says everyone has a personal happiness paradigm that we bring into the marriage, all the marriages. When we get married, we expect happiness is going to follow, and many times it does follow. And in many ways it follows. You share joys with your spouse that are amazing. But we also have to remember that while we live in a fallen world, the Lord has a personal holiness paradigm. Holiness trumps happiness. And I want to add on to that in all of our marriages, as we live in this fallen world, or if you're about to be married, if you're already married, understand this. God does want you to be holy. But your marriage is not merely about your own personal holiness in that marriage. God also has a personal proclamation paradigm. I'll say that again. God has designed a personal holiness paradigm, and that is real and good. God sanctifies us through our marriages. But he also has a goal that goes beyond your marriage to proclaim something. So as he's sanctifying you here in the midst of this fallen world, he means to hoist up your marriage, to show everybody, hey, look, this is the way it's supposed to be done, and this looks good on me, not just you, not just your marriage, but it looks good on God. God does that. So he wants to take your marriage, and your marriage may be great. You may have had a marriage for 20 years, and everything's just been a bed of roses, but have you thought that it can be better, not for your sake, but for God's proclamation's sake? Okay? Maybe it can be better so that God hoists you up to a world that says, look, fallen world, you have this expectation of where marriage is a commodity. This is what it really looks like, self-sacrificial love. And it makes good on the gospel. Top of page 23. I love this because this really does bring in some practical things that I've really wanted to say. You know, as we live in this fallen world, we have arguments. Do we not? We're you and your everyone that's in this Zoom room who is married has definitely had an argument in their marriage. Yes? Look, go like this if you understand what I'm talking about. Yes? Okay. You've had arguments. Usually, those arguments are on, or many times, those arguments are on irrational things. He says this at the top of page 23. When you begin to get on God's paradigm, life not only makes sense, the things you face are not irrational troubles, but transforming tools. I love the way he says that. So a lot of times we argue over these irrational moments where I think he talks about where you have a bad day at work, you come home, and usually the husband is not thinking, I'm just going to go make my wife's life horrible when I get home because I've had such a bad day at work. But you come in, you're already feeling bad. You enter in, you may see clothes on the couch. I've never done this before, and expect, why aren't they folded? I guess I need to fold clothes now when I get home. You got to work after work. You know, I've never thought that, right? Of course, right? And then maybe she's just, not, wanting to help out today, or maybe she's not wanting to, expecting me to do this. Maybe she's expecting me to do this, or I expected her, and then all of a sudden, you go over there, you fold the clothes in a really great attitude that she can't pick up on, and then there's an argument before the night is over about absolutely nothing. Just expect irrational thinking. Lee says, I think Tripp is making this point that in these moments when you're feeling bad or you have a horrible day, what he wants you to do is to take that moment, rationality, and transform it into a tool for transformation, a tool for sanctification. That is hard work. That is absolutely hard work. I'm going to talk about the folding clothes for a second. There have been times where you go, where I have gone to fold clothes before, and there have been times where I have just wanted to do this out of sheer love and respect and service to the family, to my wife, and she's been working so hard, and I want to take this burden off of her shoulders. But the only way I got there was by purposefully saying, before I go into that situation, I'm going to commit this moment to Christ, because there's been time and time again where I've gone into fold clothes or something, and I'm sulking in my mind, thinking about all the junk that you have to do, all the junk that you got to take care of, and kind of inwardly calculating of all the things that you take care of throughout the day, because you're just throwing yourself a personal pity party, and it's all just terrible. It's all just you're going I've gone the wrong direction over folding clothes and sanctification so many times, right? Tripp is trying to say that little situations, the little things, can be transforming tools in our marriage in the midst of this fallen world. I think of a line from C.S. Lewis, and another one from Song of Song. Let's talk about C.S. Lewis. He says that in our marriages, listen to this, or in our relationships, it's not the big things that really make the difference and that really make the big arguments. Not the big things that make the big arguments. It's the small things. Like when you walk in and she talks to you in that tone, you know what I'm talking about? And she raises the eyebrows in the way that she does. It's the raising of the eyebrows. Such a small thing, but it's the raising of the eyebrows, Lewis says. And when you see the raising of the eyebrows, what do you think? You think, well, she's doing that on purpose because she knows it drives me crazy. Right? You can see this taking place. And Lewis says those are the things that really can lead to great troubles in a marriage. It's the small things. It's the tone in the voice. It's the raising of the eyebrows. It's the clicking of the heels at the wrong time in the wrong moment. And it just boils and boils and boils. Totally irrational. But this is what happens when you live life together. Well, we live in this fallen world. In the midst of this, we are being sanctified. And I have a note here that the things that sometimes lead to screaming and cursing should lead to sanctifying and blessing. Because it's revealing something about your heart in those situations. The things that often lead to screaming and cursing, those very things are also intended to lead to sanctifying and blessing. We just need to become aware of them. Point number 2, you are a sinner married to a sinner. this is a same thing. Oh, I forgot my Song of Song reference. Let me go back. I do want to tell you this. There's a little line in the Song of Songs to make my point about small arguments that really can lead to big explosions. It says this: catch the little foxes for us, because it is the little foxes who ruin the vineyard. Okay? Catch the little foxes for us, because the little foxes who ruin the vineyard. In other words, little foxes, you can't quite see them in the midst of a vineyard, but they're constantly eating away at the best part, the part that's connected to the ground, you know, where the nourishment comes in, and it's wearing away at the root and the stem and all that, and it ruins the vineyard. You got to catch them. That takes work. Okay, point number 2, then you're a sinner married to a sinner. One of the jokes that me and my friends in college used to have, and right after college, we used to joke about how, you know, I'd see one of my friends dating a girl or about to get married or just freshly married, and clearly he outpunted his coverage. Like, how did that guy get that girl type of thing. And we used to joke and say, well, such and such, she wasn't touched by the fall. And that was obviously a very big joke, because we used to make those jokes simply because we were trying to compliment the woman. But in the joke, there's something I think that's just so obviously wrong. We are married to sinful people. Okay? The woman is a sinner. The man is a sinner. When you go into a marriage, or even if you've been married for a long time, we must remember that. We must remember, as you're going, especially for those going into a marriage, I think going into a marriage is probably the hardest time to remember this reality. You are a sinner marrying a sinner. Okay? That's the hardest time, because we're so in love, right? You're so just honeymoon phase, and everything is new, everything is easy. You know, you're freshly engaged, everyone's rejoicing, your parents are rejoicing, hopefully your friends are rejoicing, and all the rest. But it's not easy to remember, this person left without grace hates God. Right? Sinful nature. If they're a Christian, their sinful nature is being crucified, right? But nonetheless, sin is still there. I found it still on page 23. It's kind of in the middle of point number 2. He says, here's the point. You both bring something into your marriage that is destructive to what marriage needs and must do. I think it's something great to remember. With our expectations in our marriages, we both bring something to the table that is destructive. Okay? All right. Who's a teacher? I'm a teacher. Who else is a teacher? Okay. If you knew that 5th period's coming into the classroom, and you know that every single person that's coming into the classroom has something that's destructive to the classroom in their pocket, what would you do? It's okay, you can answer. Oh, you're muted. I'll tell you what you would do. That's okay, you can sit down, Michael. You'd say you need to empty your pockets. We need to take care of this, because we're not going to be able to do class if you got a switchblade in there, okay? We're gonna have to take care of business. Nowadays, they make people wear backpacks that are, you know, that you clear, you can see through them. I think it's a brilliant thing, by the way. But if they have something destructive that they're bringing to the table, the danger of that is they can use that tool to hurt others. In marriage, same situation happens. And this is something that I would do with marriage counseling, whether you've been about to be married or you've been married a long time, you have to deal with what types of sins you bring to the table. What type of baggage you're bringing in this marriage. What type of sins you did in your past. What type of sins you're going to be dealing with possibly in this marriage, so that you can talk through these things. It will not do to have those destruction things come out and just simply sweep them underneath the carpet. It will not do to leave sin unaddressed. You know, I think here's a dangerous thing. Sometimes we as Christians can fall into the trap of when an argument happens and one or both of the parties sins, to let it fizzle down and expect it to go away. You just don't bring it up anymore. I find that to be a very dangerous thing, because here's why. The next time you have an argument, which is bound to happen, you will remember the previous one. And you will not remember any resolution from it. It will just keep compounding. If you're sweeping it underneath the carpet, which that's essentially what you're doing, don't bring it up again. Don't talk about it, because they won't know how to deal with forgiveness. They won't know how to deal with fixing that situation. It'll resolve on its own. Sin is always likened, listen to this, sin is always in the scriptures likened to things that grow. Okay? Sin brings forth death, you understand? Or a little leaven leavens the whole lump. It spreads. So unrepentant sin in a marriage, unforgiven, unresolved sin, expecting it, just sweep it under the carpet, expecting it to go away, don't bring it up again, will grow. It will not shrink or disappear. It will just get worse. I like what he says, though. At some point, because we're sinners, at some point we will be selfish. We will speak unkindly. We will have jealousy, bitterness, and conflict. We are sinners married to sinners. And we tend to deal with things like sinners. The way we need to deal with that is with open confession and repentance and clear communication. And if both of you understand that you're sinners, then you can be humble and kind and compassionate to each other. If you know the other person's dealing with temptation and you are too, and you're both in this together, it becomes much, much easier. Communication is so key in dealing with your sinful spouse and in dealing with yourself as well. Just want to give, let me see. On the note of speaking unkindly and dealing with sin, let me tell you, I kind of want to tie this into what I said earlier about small things. If you're okay, I'm going to use the air in the shower.
I feel like y'all are getting all of your pet peeves are coming out in this Sunday night series.
Yeah, that's right. I'm going to start with myself. Small things can really irritate people. Thorns hurt, and they're annoying. Okay, thorns really hurt. Being a sinner, married to a sinner, from my perspective, I have a lot to work on. I know that when I take a shower and I put my clothes in that corner, that it's really easy to do that, to put my clothes in that corner. And I could say to myself, I could justify to myself, I'll pick it up. I'll pick it up and it'll be all right. But I know that my better half hates that. Absolutely hates walking into the bathroom that she's cleaned, that looks really good, and see a pile of filth stacked in that one corner. That's the first thing that you see. And yet, what a small thing, right? And yet I keep doing it. It's so difficult. Y'all need to pray for me. This is how bad I am, though, with my sin. I know that when I get into the shower, that there's going to be, women shed hair in the shower. If you notice, like it just falls out. Men don't usually deal with it, but it just falls out. That it will be clumped together in a big circle and stuck on the side of the wall with the intention of wiping it off and throwing it away. But usually I see that little rat nest there right next to the shower head. And I look at that, and here's how sinful I get sometimes. I think, well, there's going to be a big pile of clothes in the corner. And until she takes care of that issue, I'm not going to take care of this issue. That's how sinful my mind tends to think about little things. Talk about some arguments here. Or sinners married to sinners. All right, let's talk about that just a little bit more. Go on page 24. I'm hoping you guys are thinking of some things that we can discuss after the recording is off. But on page 24, first full paragraph. He says, often in these God-given moments of ministry, I love how he does that, God-given moments of ministry, rather than serving God's purpose, we get angry because somehow our spouse is in the way of what we want. This leads to the second thing that happens. The reason we turn moments of ministry into moments of anger is we tend to personalize what is not personal. So many times we tend to personalize what is not meant to be personal at all. And I know that you feel the next line. I know that you feel this. I felt this often. At the end of his bad day at work, your husband doesn't say to himself, I know what I'll do. I'll take my bad day out on my wife so that her day gets as wrecked as mine. No, the trouble you are experiencing is not about you directly. Yes, it is your trouble because this angry man is your husband, but what you are experiencing is not personal in terms of conscious intentionality. You are living with a sinner. You will experience his sin. And it may have nothing to do with you. Your spouse may come home from a bad day of work, and just the tone in speaking to you may just be off. It's easy to recognize, but it may have nothing at all to do with you. It is okay in those moments to say, listen, I know you had a bad day at work, but your tone sounds like you're taking it out on me, and I'm just letting you be aware of that, and let's just try to work through it. I'm not your enemy. I'm your partner. I'm your friend. I'm your spouse, and I love you. Let's work through it. Of course, you can think about how to say it in a very kind and polite way. Look at the next paragraph. He says, now, when you personalize what is not personal, you tend to be adversarial in your response. Very true, right? You had a bad day. You walk in. Hey, when's dinner getting ready? It'll be ready when it's done. You see, like that's the adversary response, right? Small things. Look at the very bottom. What do we do with this? It says, we settle for quick situational solutions that do not get to the heart of the matter. That's in italics at the very bottom. We settle for quick situational solutions that don't get to the heart of the matter. Getting to the heart of the matter is bringing sanctification to bear in our marriages. And that's much harder than just getting through that situation. We can kind of address it superficially, but that doesn't actually lead to sanctification. That just leads to a quick fix, but it'll come up again and again. All right, point number 3. God is faithful, powerful, and willing. This was his shortest point, but I think it's great. He says, up to this point, you can almost get like kind of discouraged. We're sinners, married to sinners. We're living in a fallen world. We're having these arguments over irrational things, small things. What we need to remember is God, who determined the address where we live, is also committed to giving us everything that we need. It says in 1 Peter, it says, by his precious and very great promises, he has granted to us all things that pertain to life and godliness. What a great promise, by the way. Do you all know that promise? By his precious and very great promises, he's given us all things that pertain to life and godliness. He's powerful, and he can help us in any situation that our marriage is dealing with at that moment, if we commit it to him. Okay, I would like to open this up for discussion now. And so, Walter, if you would, please